Seven of Nine's journey in Star Trek Voyager, from mindless drone to stunning individual, is fascinating to watch. Half of the time, she doesn't understand why humans do what they do, and honestly, who can blame her? The other half of the time, she's actually trying to learn social skills and the subtle art of give and take. She's a brilliant strategist and totally fearless, but she's also my worst nightmare when it comes to a coworker. In today's live stream, we will count down the top 10 best 7 of 9 episodes from Star Trek Voyager. So grab your nanoprobes and a data port and let's start the show. Hello and welcome to the Savage Stream, the weekly live stream where we talk all things Star Trek. And today we are talking about one of my favorite characters in the entire Trek universe, 7 of 9. She had, I want to say a really big trajectory and arc, but she kind of didn't. Okay, so she joined the crew of Voyager in season 4, so in their 4th year of their journey or whatever. So we didn't get a full 7 seasons of transformation with this character. We only got a couple seasons. So really, from when we first meet her in season 4 to when we last see her in season 7, there's not a huge change. So there is an evolution of this character, of course, but the change is not that dramatic. And it's because even in the end, she's still pretty cold, for lack of a better word, very mechanical. She's still Borg-like, even though she's trying to remove the rest of her augments and experience more emotions and hook up with Chakotay and all kinds of things in season 7. She's still pretty much herself. But if you extrapolate that out to the character that she portrayed in Picard, season 1, and in season 2, she's quite different. And season 3, she's quite a different character than what we see at the end of Voyager. But her arc starts back here, which I love. In today's live stream, we're just going to be talking about everything she goes through in Voyager. We're not really going to dive into anything going on in Picard. However, if you're a big fan of 7 of 9 and you have not yet seen Picard, it's worth watching just for that. But however, it's not worth watching for many other reasons, in my opinion. There's, I don't know, some parts of it I really love and some parts of it I really don't. So I guess, it's just an acquired taste. So you do you watch it, you let me know how you think. But what I want to start with today is the first episode in the long list of 7 of 9 episodes. And just to preface this, 2 things. 1, there are timestamps below. So if you want to jump ahead to the next episode, you can do so at any time. And 2, I was actually just watching this interview with the actress who played 7 of 9. And she was saying that when Paramount Plus brought her on to play this role, she had never seen before in her career or since the amount of effort that went behind making 7 of 9 a central character. This was a huge push by the network. And I have to say it's been successful because she was one of the only characters who came back in season 1 of Picard from any previous Trek, maybe the only one other than Picard himself, which is saying a lot, right? For the longevity of this character and the love that people have for this character. So without further ado, I'm going to get to the first episode on the list that I feel like shows a bit of a departure from where we first see her when she's a drone disconnected to the hive. And she's like, send me back. You guys have kidnapped me. Now we've gone a bit further than that. That happened at the beginning of season 4, episode 1. And this first episode is going to be the end of season 4. So let's check it out. Season 4, Episode 26, Hope and Fear. Voyager receives encrypted communication from Starfleet containing coordinates for an unmanned Starfleet ship that could take them home. The message is finally decrypted by a brilliant alien named Arcturus, who ends up being a dangerous enemy. Turns out, this ship was just a trap to get the crew assimilated by the Borg in revenge for their participation in the conflict with Species 847. So I freaking love this episode. I think it's so good. And the reason why it's the first on the list, as far as the transition from, Borg drone, you kidnapped me, to all of a sudden, Arcturus comes along and he's trying to assimilate them all. The reason why I love this is because the whole time, all of season 4, 7 has been telling Janeway, Borg are so superior and humanity sucks because 7 is human before she was assimilated. So now she's kind of conflicted, right? She's trying to regain her humanity, but at the same time seeing all the shortfalls of humanity and all the shortcomings. And it's kind of why would I want to be human when being a drone was better? So this whole season, she's been going back and forth with Janeway of the collective was so much better. Borg are so much better. We're so much more perfect, blah, 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 blah. Then in this episode, at the very end, after Arcturus captures just Janeway and 7, everybody else gets away. Janeway's talking to Seven, and she's like, do you still want to rejoin the collective? Because like we're on our way to do that. And Seven's like, I mean, now that it's happening, nah, I'm good. Like I really would prefer to be individual. I don't really want to do this. And I love that. I love that it took 26 episodes for her to be like, you know what? I thought my old comfort zone was where I wanted to stay. But in actuality, even though this transition period is very uncomfortable, this is what I really want, which totally I can relate to because I mean, life, right? Like sometimes you're like, oh, that comfort zone, I know it's not that great, but it's what I'm used to. And then you get to a new place in life, which is also uncomfortable. And you're kind of like, oh, well, you know, the grass is always greener. I remember back when things were so much better, when I had it so much easier, etc. And it's like, sometimes you need a big reframe, like almost being assimilated to say, wait a minute, this is actually better. It is uncomfortable, but it's a different kind of discomfort. And this is actually better. So, okay, I want to jump into the chat and I want to say hello to everybody watching live. Hello to everybody watching on the replay. And OMG, Nadia jumped in as a member and so did Win Grace. Welcome to the away team. So the Sci-Fi Savage channel now has memberships as of about a week ago. I now have that capacity and I have my very first 2 members. I want to say hello to PS2 Chipper, who was first in the chat as always. I had a whole little like video introducing the membership and stuff like that. Let me rephrase. I had a whole idea for a video introducing the membership, but I did not have time. And today was just a thing. Can I show this? Look, I can show this. Oh, that's so neat. Oh, I love that. Look at that. And you guys get badges too. Exactly. You guys get custom badges. You get custom emoji. I think I need like, I don't know, 3 members or something to add more emoji. But you know what? I made the emoji. I made the badges. So like, it's okay if we don't have a lot of them because I am not a graphic designer. Hey, PS2 Chipper. Good to see you. Okay. So let me jump into the comments. Yeah. Okay. Nadia says, I love that moment when Seven says she actually wouldn't want to be reassimilated also. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. So she says Nadia also says it's so sad when Arturis sits down and watches as the Borg approach and tell him that resistance is futile. Like thank you so much. I appreciate the support so much. You just don't understand how much you guys just made my day today, which has been a rough day, FYI. Yeah, so this episode, like to your point, Nadia, of Arturis, in the beginning, he just seems like a nice guy, right? He's just helping him out and he's figuring out this code that they've had for a while and nobody could decode it. And he kind of seems cool. However, even in the very beginning, there's a scene when Janeway's talking to Tuvok and she's like, why do I have a knot in my stomach? Something about this is wrong. I don't trust this. And it's like moments like that is why I deeply admire Janeway, because I'd be on team Harry Kim, right? I'd be like, woo, new ship. Like, let's get out of here. Let's get out of the Delta Quadrant. Let's like self-destruct this bad boy. You know, let's go home. But Janeway was like 2 things. One, she was like, I'm not going to abandon Voyager after all she's done for us. Like, we're going to try to tow this ship with us or something. We're not going to leave it back here. And then 2, she was like, I don't trust Arturis. Like, we have this code that we can't decrypt and suddenly someone shows up who has the perfect decryption key. Like, that's really suspicious. I didn't think it was suspicious at all. And then when Harry Kim finds that there's something weird about the ship, then they're like, yep, that was it. I called it. And I'm like, how did you get, I wouldn't have got that. I would have totally been kidnapped. I would have totally been assimilated. I would have fallen for all of it. But in the end, when Arturis is doing his like bad guy monologue for why he's so, why this was his whole big plan, it's a really heartbreaking monologue, right? Like he is like, you know, he's yelling at Janeway and he says, I don't blame them. And he points at 7 of 9. I don't blame them. They were mindless drones. They were acting out of collective instinct, but I blame you because you had a choice and you chose to work with the Borg to defeat species 8472. And we, my people, we had been defending ourselves against the Borg for so many years, decades, whatever. And this was finally our chance to turn the tide and to get rid of them once and for all. But you joined that side and allowed them to win. And now our whole plan has been destroyed and everyone's been assimilated. Right. And you just feel like that actor killed it. Like the guy who plays Arturis, he killed it because you can just feel the pain and the rage and the outrage in him. And Janeway's reaction is very diplomatic. And she's just like, you have to understand, I didn't know that was going to happen. And like, yeah, she didn't know what was going to happen. That's true. But this is kind of the problem, right? Like, you're blowing through the Delta Quadrant, doing all kinds of stuff, wreaking all kinds of havoc. But because you're on your way out of the Delta Quadrant, you're not really tripping about the consequences too much. Prime directive, schmime directive, right? So I feel like in this situation, there's really no, like, nobody wins, right? There's nothing you can do to make Arturis feel better. His entire world is gone. All his people are gone. There's like, I think he said 10 or 20,000 from an entire world, from billions left. And he was even like, I was lucky. I escaped with a ship. So the ones that are left alive, we don't even know like where they are. I mean, he's basically Guinan, right? But a more like murdery Guinan and a more vengeful version. And like, there's no winning. There's nothing Janeway can do at this point to help or assuage him or anything. And it's completely understandable that Arturis wants revenge because he feels like he has nothing to live for. So he's like, well, why don't we all get assimilated? You know what I mean? And it's just kind of like, dang, you know, it's really hard to be like, Arturis is the bad guy. Because like, he is the bad guy. And this is definitely evil villain lair type stuff that he's doing. But also, he's in mourning. He's in grief. He's got nothing left to live for. So he's trying to take everybody down with him, which I feel like is extremely human. Anyways, excellent episode. Really like this episode. If you haven't seen it in a while, definitely recommend doing a rewatch. Mr. Captain 93 says, taking a left turn, the toll the hollow Borg took on Boimler in lower decks. Yikes. Imagine what the real Borg might have been like. Wingrace says, I remember reading that his race is supposed to be the same race as the Borg Queen. Get out of town. Because they had that elongated head. You know what? I was actually thinking about, like, I was really paying attention to the shape of Arturis's head today because we have like the HD version nowadays, right? And I was wondering if we had ever seen this alien before. I was actually thinking the same thing with Icheb, like with the ridge. I was like, have we seen that alien before? And then with some other alien, I was just like, the shape looks familiar, but I don't know if we've ever actually seen that alien before. If I've seen it maybe in Discovery, because Discovery was like all about Easter eggs of bringing back all these cultures we've only seen once, and so was Lower Decks. Or like, is it just that, you know, some aliens have big heads, or you know what I mean? Like, it's just a coincidence. But that's super interesting. Nadia says, I never put that together. I thought the queen's head was elongated because of Borg assimilation, like how a queen bee is basically a female that gets transformed and grows a ton. Ooh, that's interesting. Wingrace says, I have no idea if it's canon or just an idea. Yeah, it's probably not canon. But you know what? I'm going to say you can make canon whatever you want to make canon because that's how fans are. Let me tell you, I made a video about the Borg and I got so many people being like, I read a comic that said this, or I read a blog that said that. And so that's what it is. So whatever. Nadia says, I read that the Huns used to bind their skulls in childhood so their heads would elongate. Get out of town. So maybe the Borg Queen and Arturis are actually Huns. That is interesting. Mr. Captain 93 says, he made a point to think about there would have been species in the Delta Quadrant rooting for species 8472 if Voyager didn't show up, how different things would have been. Exactly, Nadia says. It's a really interesting point to think about. Because memberships, yes. Because like, I feel like this is the only time, and maybe I'm wrong, because like other than Seska, but that doesn't count because Seska was a part of the crew. I feel like this is the only time where Janeway's been called on her messing with things going on in the Delta Quadrant. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like this is the only time someone's been like, excuse you, you don't even live here. Have you thought about how you're affecting other people here? I feel like this is the only time that happened, but I could be wrong. Let me know in the chat if that isn't correct. Woo! PS2 Chipper just joined. Another member. Hey, welcome to the away team. Okay, now let's go to the next episode on the list. Oh, by the way, if you have a favorite 7 of 9 episode, please drop it in the chat below, even if it's not from Voyager. Season 5, Episode 2, Drone. A transporter accident merges the Doctor's mobile emitter with 7's nanoprobes, creating a highly advanced Borg drone. As the new drone begins to assimilate knowledge, the Borg attempt to capture him. One is able to help Voyager resist assimilation by destroying the Borg ship and ultimately sacrificing himself. Okay, before we talk about this episode, I just have to say that PS2 Chipper just gifted 5 memberships to the away team. So, if you wanted to join memberships, why don't I just talk about memberships for really quick for like the 6 of you who are watching and the couple of you that are going to watch later. So, just started memberships. I'm super excited. I cannot wait to figure out all the different perks that I can provide for the members of the away team, which is the name of the membership. And if you are a founding member, like the people joining today, for example, you will have a big say in the direction of this membership and what is offered and how often, etc. Because I want this to be like by us and for us, run by the community. So I'm super excited about it. Oh, and PS2 Chipper donated $7.09 for 7 of 9. I love that. That's really cute. So you will have a big say in the direction that this membership goes to. And I'm excited about that because this is for us. This is by fans for fans. And what I love about you guys, everybody who's in the chat and the people who like watch and who comment and stuff, is that we love this show and we're not afraid to say when the show's not perfect. Right? We're not afraid to be like, ooh, it missed the mark there, or like that was really crazy or whatever. So it's like we have an honesty. It's not a reverence thing where it's like can do no wrong, but at the same time, we can point out the things we freaking love, and we can do it really respectfully. Like I love that we can all have different opinions and different, favorite episodes and favorite characters and whatever. And that's definitely the space that I want to create on the internet. A space where we can talk about things we love and things we think are stupid, but do it in a way where we all laugh at the end of the day, So I just want to say I appreciate you, all of you, for being a part of that dream, because that's the kind of world I want to live in. And since I can't live in that world, that's the kind of internet I want to search. I love this. So yes, this part. Okay. So going back, yeah, PS2 Chipper says, not perfect. Have you seen the Salamander episode? Nadia says, cough, cough, code of honor. Oh gosh, you guys are just bringing out the gems here. The gems that need to be thrown into a dumpster and set on fire. Okay, yes, this episode, Drone, is one of my favorites. In the evolution of 7, this gives us a chance for her to see kind of a mirror of how far she's come. And this is only season 5. This is the beginning of season 5. It's episode 2. So in season 4, she was still in the collective. So just one season later, presumably a year later, I'm not totally sure how time works in space shows because of time dilation and whatnot, but let's say a year. A year later, now she's seeing how she was with this drone, because he has no concept of humanity versus being a Borg or whatever. He kind of has some pre-programmed responses when he comes out of the maturation chamber. He's like, we are Borg, state our designation. And that's all he has. It's just kind of like a blank operating system. And when 7 puts in all of those, gives him enough information to like speak and understand language and, history of things or whatever, he's like, wow. I mean, it's so cute, right? He's like, we're on a spaceship. We're explorers. Like, it's just super cute. And of course, Neelix is there, like Papa Neelix. Ooh, that was horrible. I'm not going to say that ever again. Uncle Neelix. Ooh, that's even creepier. Okay, so Neelix was there and he was doing his like mentor thing, which I love. I do love when Neelix is like I love when he's an ambassador, and I love the way he is really good with kids, helping them feel like safe and seen and heard and things like that. Not when he's being creepy with Kess, but when he's like with actual adolescents and he's just being like a helpful mentor figure. I love that. And so that's what he's doing right here with the drone. And he's like just kind of taking him under his wing, and it's really sweet, right? And the drone is like, wow, we're explorer. I'm an explorer. And Neelix is like, yeah, we all are. And he goes, we are Borg. And Neelix is like, not exactly. And it's just really cute. But anyways, 7 gets to see herself through him, and he's really naive and sweet. And he's kind of like, why can't I go to the Borg though? Because they seem cool. Like, what's the problem? And 7 doesn't want to tell him because she's afraid that he will want to seek them out. And if the collective get their hands on one, they will be unstoppable because he's a 29th century drone and they're in the 24th century, I think, or 25th. I don't know. Remind me in the chat. I think it's 24th. And so 7's like, we can't let him know about the Borg. He's going to be seduced away. And Janeway's like, okay, we can keep a secret for now, but he's becoming an individual and he has a right to know about his heritage. And so she's like, all right, we'll tell him later. Well, later comes sooner than they think because there's some kind of beacon that activates, that tells the collective that a single drone is somewhere so they can go and collect them. And one grows this beacon like overnight or whatever. His nanoprobes regenerate one or whatever. And so he ends up signaling the Borg to come and get him accidentally in his sleep while he's regenerating. And so now the Borg are there. They're attacking. They're like, we're going to assimilate you. Yes. And the drone, one is like, yay, the Borg, I've always wanted to meet them. And Seven's like, no, bad. And Janeway's like, okay, it's time for you to tell him everything about the Borg from our perspective. And so they tell him, like, the Borg are very destructive and they assimilate people and they don't give people a chance to be individuals. And we don't like that. And we don't want to be assimilated. And he's trying to understand this. And he's like, I need time to process all of this. And they're like, the Borg are about to attack us in like 10 seconds. We have no time for you to process this. You just got to pick a side, us or them. And so one picks them and destroys them or picks, Voyager, destroys the Borg sphere completely. And then is damaged, but not beyond repair. So in that last scene, he is in sick bay and he's all bloody and gross. And the doctor can fix him, can save him, can heal him. But he's like, no, he puts up a force field and he's like, no, the doctor's not allowed to operate. And Seven's like, what are you doing? Let the doctor operate. Like, stop it. And he's like, no, the Borg are now aware of me. They're aware of my consciousness. They're aware of my existence. And as long as I exist, you and the entire crew are in danger. So I can no longer exist. And she's like, what are you talking about? You're unique. You're special. Like all these things. And that's when she says that line, you're hurting me. And he goes, you will adapt. And then he dies. And you're like, it's like so heartbreaking. Like I've seen this episode 100 times and I still get choked up at the end because I don't know, the connection just seems really real. He really just seems like a kid, a big kid, but a kid who's really naive and his life was so short and it's really sad. But like that his last act is self-sacrifice is also very human, right? So as far as like the best of humanity, the opposite of being super selfish. So yeah. Super amazing episode. I love it. Yeah, I'm going to check the chat and then we'll go to the next episode on the list. Oh gosh, I know. So yeah, when Grace called me on it, Daddy Neelix, what are you talking about? And Mr. Captain 9193 is like, Uncle Neelix? Yeah, it's so much worse. It's so much worse. Okay, Nadia says Godfather. Okay, thank you. Godfather Neelix? Like, how can I have a nickname for Neelix that doesn't make my skin crawl? Yes, Godfather Neelix. Nadia says, imagine if one had been assimilated and the Borg became the Uber Borg. I bet Voyager would be opening up that spatial rift again to bring 8472 back. We changed our minds. I know, but Arturus would be like too little, too late because he would be a Borg drone at this point. Man. Okay. Let's go to the next episode on the list. Season 5, Episode 7, Infinite Regress. Seven begins experiencing random personality takeovers caused by a damaged Borg vinculum, which carries an anti-Borg biological weapon. Voyager races to shut it down before Seven loses her mind completely. Tuvok helps with a mind meld, while the aliens that created the weapon attack the ship for interfering. There is a lot going on in this one. Okay, so this is like not one of my favorite episodes, unlike the other ones where I was like, oh, I love this episode. I don't love this episode, but I feel like it deserves to be on this list. And here's why. There was an episode, which may have been this one, but I don't remember. And if you remember, let me know in the chat. But there was this episode where somebody asked 7 of 9 if she remembered what it was like to be assimilated. And she said no, because I think she was 8 when she was assimilated. And then she was put in a Borg maturation chamber and like aged up to an adult. And then she came back out. And that's how she's been. So she said something like, no, I was too young. I don't remember. It was so long ago. But in reality, she did remember. And later on in that episode, she confessed to someone. She was like, I actually remember it. And it was the most painful thing I had ever experienced. And I'm so ashamed that I submitted other people to that treatment. I'm so ashamed that I spent so much of my life assimilating others. Right. And, and whoever she was admitting it to, I'm going to feel like maybe it was the doctor. I don't know. Whoever she was admitting it to was just like, yeah, but you were assimilating people as part of the collective. You weren't doing it by choice or for funsies. You were doing what you were told to do. Like that was your life as a drone. You didn't have any autonomy. And she's like, I understand that. But the thousands and thousands and thousands of people that I assimilated, I know I inflicted that same level of pain on them that was inflicted on me. And how do I live with that? right? And so that's why I love this episode, because in this episode, when she starts kind of like having all these multiple personalities, these are the personalities specifically of the drones, or of the people that she assimilated herself. And when they show the scene of what it's like in her internal world, where it's just like thousands of species and they're all mad at her and they're all yelling at her and they're all scared, or whatever they were feeling at the moment that they got assimilated, at the moment that their minds joined the collective, they're all kind of like pulling at her and fighting with her or whatever. And what I like is that they try to make a visual representation of the internal struggle. So I appreciate that. And for that reason alone, it made this list. The episode itself, meh. Like, you don't have to watch this one. You can give this one a skip. I think all the mind jump stuff is kind of like weird. I think this is Voyager's version of Masks from TNG, where Data was a whole entire civilization. This is their version of that. And the only character here who could really do it, other than 7 of 9, is the Doctor. And we get a lot of the Doctor doing a lot of things. So I think this was a way for them to do that same episode, but how could they mix it up a little bit? Tuvok jumps in with his mind meld ability, and then his mind is in the hallway getting beat up by these other minds, just like Seven's mind. And he's like, Seven, and she's like, Tuvok. And then eventually all the minds go away, and it's just the two of them, and they're just in this dark cavern. It's weird. So yeah, that's the episode. You can give that one a skip. Okay, so I'm going to check the chat, and then we're going to go to the next episode on the list. Nadia says, I swear Tuvok jumps to mind melds just as often as Janeway activates the Voyager self-destruct. I was literally, well, not literally, but I was thinking something extremely similar when I was preparing these videos today, Nadia. I was like, how come every other episode I look at, Tuvok is like, I have an idea, Captain. We could do a mind meld. I'm like, it's definitely a one-trick pony, but I have to say it's effective. Every time he uses it, it's like magic. Mr. Captain 93 says, oh my gosh, wait, Mr. Captain, did you join membership? I missed it. Oh, where is it? I missed it so I can put you on the screen. I don't know. But thank you for joining. I think that's what the little circle thingy means. Okay, maybe she was 7 when she was assimilated. Get it? 7 of 9. Yeah, maybe. She was like, I don't think she was 7 though. I think she was 6 or she was 8, but she was very little. Randall Wong says, that guy is worried about the rain, but doesn't have an umbrella. Are you talking about Tuvok? Hold on. I don't know where that came from. I think I missed something. But Mr. Captain 93, welcome to the away team. I don't know why I can't find it in the chat, but welcome to the away team. Jerry's acting was great in this episode, though. Yeah, I will agree with that. So the actress who plays 7 of 9 did such a good job portraying all these different personalities. One of the personalities was like a little kid, where she was playing Scott with Naomi Wildman, which was the cutest thing ever. And one of her personalities was a Ferengi, and she did like the body movements and the mannerisms perfectly. Like, she killed it. I totally agree. When Grace, his mind was in the hallway being beaten up. Yeah, by all the other minds. I love your show. Thanks. The astute chipper says, mind melds are chicken soup for the Vulcan race. Okay, on that note, let's get the next episode on the list. Season 5, Episode 14, Bliss. Voyager encounters a wormhole that appears to lead directly to Earth, but 7 and Naomi Wildman remain suspicious. They discover the wormhole is actually a telepathic space creature luring ships into its aperture to be consumed. With help from an alien, Captain Ahab, they are able to escape the creature's trap just in time. So I actually love this episode. I freaking love Bliss. It's very much like their Jaws episode or something. So like, I just love this episode, period. And since we're talking about 7's best episodes, of course it's going to make the list. What's interesting about this is that in the beginning, the whole entire ship, except for 7 and Naomi, are convinced that this creature is a wormhole directly to the Alpha Quadrant. And 7 is just like, that seems extremely unlikely. And everyone else is like, no, it's real, it's real. And they're preparing the whole ship, and everyone's making plans for what they're going to do when they get back to Earth. People are so excited. And she's even saying stuff like Tsunkatse or B'Elanna, like, aren't you going to face charges for being a Maquis when you get back? And they're like, oh no, we got a message from Earth saying like all charges have been dropped or whatever, and Tom Paris is like, and my dad loves me now. And Harry Kim's like, and my girlfriend waited for me or whatever. They've got all these like stories about best case scenario that's going to be true when they get back. I think for B'Elanna, it was because at this point, B'Elanna had found out that the rest of her Maquis friends had been killed in a major conflict, which was really upsetting. There was a whole episode about her just grief and spiraling out because of that. So here, what the creature, which is able to control everybody's mind, told her was that they're actually all alive, they're happy, they're well. And so when they wake her up in sickbay, she sees them and she's like, oh my gosh, I thought you guys, what happened? Oh, it's so good to see. You know what I mean? Like, so the fantasies that this creature gives people are extremely pleasant, so pleasant they don't want to wake up, they don't want to fight back, and they want to just kind of sleep until they're ingested by the creature. Seven doesn't fall for it only because she has zero desire to go back to the Alpha Quadrant. Like, yeah, she doesn't want to be a drone anymore, and she doesn't want to go to the collective again, but she has no emotional ties to Earth whatsoever. She has an aunt there that she doesn't know or remember. So other than that, she has no family, she has no friends, and she also feels like people are going to look at her sideways because she's Borg. They're going to see her augment on her eye and just be like, treat her as an outsider or maybe be afraid of her. So she just does not see there having a future for her in Earth. But because she's part of this crew, she's part of that mission, So that's the only reason she didn't fall for it. And same thing for Naomi Wildman. She was born on this ship. She's been raised on this ship. This is her home. So for her, she's like, what do I care about Earth? I just want to live on Voyager forever. This is my ship. That's the only reason it didn't work. At the end of the episode, when they're fighting this monster and they're trying to escape, the alien Captain Ahab is like on his ship, and then Seven and the Doctor and Naomi are on Voyager, and they're both like fighting. They're both shooting into the creature, and then Seven stops shooting. She's like, "We're out. We're safe from the creature." And Captain Ahab is like, "Why did you stop shooting? Keep shooting. We're still in the creature." And she's like, "No, we're not. We're totally out." And he's like, "You're being deceived. It's lying to you. We're still in. You got to keep shooting." And she was like, "No, I'm immune to being affected by this monster, by this creature." And he's like, "No, you're not. You just weren't tricked by going to Earth because you had no desire for that. But you do desire to be out of the creature's stomach. So you can be tricked for that." And she's like, "Oh man." So she just keeps shooting, even though the sensors are telling her they're out. Everything is telling her they're out. She just keeps shooting. She trusts Captain Ahab, and then boom, they really are out. It's a little bit like what are those Freddy Krueger movies called? Nightmare on Elm Street. It's a little bit like Nightmare on Elm Street though, because you're like, are you really out? How do you know you're really out? What's the proof? You couldn't trust the sensors before. Can you trust the sensors now? But everybody wakes up, so I guess that's proof. And they go free and they head on back to, back on course to the Alpha Quadrant. But I love that there is a creature that lives in space that can control people's minds and trick them into flying themselves into its stomach, that it evolved this way, that it's existed for millennia. This is the kind of interesting stuff that I feel like Star Trek is so good at and should do more of, with creating life forms that are so out of the box, right? This creature reminds me a lot of the crystalline entity, right? That killer snowflake, where it's like a creature so unlike something you would think of being on Earth. It's not like something that has two legs, two arms, eyes that face forward. You know what I mean? It's something completely different, just totally, totally different. And I love that. I think it's so interesting. And they could have just made it a big blob in space. They could have done that. But then to add these extra layers, like how would it evolve mind control? Why would it evolve mind control? You just like so many things. Are there others? Does it have a mate? And then Captain Ahab at the end of this episode, when Voyager is free, Captain Ahab turns his ship around. He's like, back to the creature, because it's his goal to someday destroy this creature, which I think we can all agree is never going to happen. But he's got nothing else to do because the ship that he was previously on with his family and all of his people was eaten by this creature. So now he lives for revenge. Like this is his thing now. He's got nowhere else to go, nowhere else to be, no one else to be with. This is his calling. He will keep going until the creature eats him or he just dies of old age, which is a little sad. But I mean, if it's what makes him happy, I guess he's got nothing else to do. Okay. So I'm going to check the chat and then we will go to the next episode on the list. I love this. PS2 Chipper. We're going to need a bigger starship. Man, that would have been a good line. Oh, I wish the Doctor would have said that. Man, I would have like totally geeked out. I would have been like, we're going to need a bigger ship. You know what? Have you guys ever seen the show Castle? It's a crime drama show, but like a silly sitcom-y type thing. Anyways, I just started watching it. It's a super old show. I just started watching it, and it's like this cop and this writer who writes mystery novels. So he follows the cop around, and they do like, they solve crimes together or whatever. So they had an episode that was at a sci-fi convention, and I was like, eek, because I love sci-fi conventions. And the actor who plays Castle was the actor in Firefly. And so there was a scene where there was a crime, of course, at the convention. And so the cop is like, we got to go look at the crime scene. And he's like, there's been a murder, shiny. And I lost it. I was like, oh my gosh, he said shiny. Like I lost it. So yeah, if he would have said we're going to need a bigger starship, I would have just lost my mind in all the best ways. And Grace. If Joe Carey was in this episode, he would have said, I can't wait to get home and retire and spend some time with my kids. Joe Carey was the character whose face got cut off by the Vidians in season 1, right? Why do you keep bringing this person up? This is like the saddest life of ever, who doesn't even get a whole story. But yeah, if he were still on the show now, that's what he would want. He would just want to make it through. Hello, Exoteric. There is some good nerd stuff going on here. We're talking all about Star Trek. We're talking about the best episodes of 7 of 9 on Voyager. So stick around. We've got some episodes to come. Yeah. Okay. This is Voyager's Nagilum episode, which is the what was that? Where Silence has lease? Was that the name of that episode, or where no man has gone before? Where no one's gone before? Yeah, it's kind of like that. It's kind of like that, except for that was the big space newt, right? I think this big space creature is more interesting looking and acting than the space newt. The space newt was kind of menacing, and I'm not totally sure why, right? It just was kind of bored. Versus at least this creature is eating, Mr. Captain 91 says, this has a TOS feeling. That's interesting. Nadia says, I love those spacefaring entities. They fill me with joy and gratitude. That is a throwback to the space jellies in Encounter at Farpoint, which is the pilot episode of Star Trek TNG, which if you have not seen that episode in a while, go ahead and give it a skip. Best of Trek, Worst of Trek says, just learned this the other day. William Morgan Shepherd, that plays the old hunter, is the dad of the actor that plays Icheb's father on Voyager. Get out of town. It is a small world. Get out of town. That, because everything's like all in HD and stuff now. When I was looking at that clip today, you get like all these close-ups of the alien makeup, and it looks really good. Like even still after all this time and with the close-ups, I was like, how did they do that? I mean, they put ridges, and they did an amazing makeup job. That kind of makeup job makes it so that the actor playing that role could come back again and again and again, and you would never know because it was so thorough. And it didn't look like a big giant head wrapped around that they just kind of add stuff to. They really went in, and you could tell they put prosthetics on the face and shaped that face to match this alien look. It was just like a masterful job. Oh, hey, Nadia also loves Castle. Exoteric says, yeah, Castle was hilarious. His daughter was maybe the coolest character, right? She was pretty cool. She's pretty cool. Oh, wait. Okay. Nadia says, no, Carrie was the other guy who would have been chief engineer, right? No, Carrie didn't die until season 7. Is Carrie the one who... Okay, now I'm not sure who Joe Carey is. Is he the one who got eaten by the giant worms when Seska... No, wait, not until season 7. Who is Joe Carey? Just tell me who this person is, because I'm confusing him with a couple of other Voyager crew members who didn't make it back to Earth. Oh, I'm thinking of Durst, who had his face cut off. That's exactly who I was thinking of. And Nadia says, deep cut. I see what you did there. Oh, okay. Joe Carey was TNG, was the guy that Torres stole the chief engineer from. The writers forgot about him for years and then killed him off like 2 episodes before they got home. Oh, man. So this was the guy that B'Elanna punched in the face, right? How did they kill him off? Was it the Borg who killed him? And why did he die like 2 episodes before the end? What happened? Yeah. Oh, okay. PS2 Chipper says, if you like makeup, you need to watch Farscape, which I have never seen. Now you have the Castle theme song stuck in your head. You're welcome. Okay, let's hit the next episode on the list. Season 5, Episode 20, Think Tank. Voyager is targeted by bounty hunters, but a group of intellectual problem solvers offers a solution, on the condition that Seven joins their group. The crew joins forces with the bounty hunters to try to expose the think tank, which orchestrated this entire situation in the first place. Turns out, the bounty on the think tank was way higher than Voyager, and they were more than happy to switch their allegiance. I freaking love this episode. Okay, this is another one where I'm like, I love it. I don't know. Every time I watch it, every part of it, I'm so interested in. Again, similar to the big space creature in Bliss, this has aliens that are a little bit different from what we've seen before. So one of the things that's different is the character who's next to Jason Alexander's character, whose name I forget, but the one with like all the ridges on his face and stuff like that, he's got a language that's so advanced, the universal translator can't figure it out. Like it cannot translate it, which is interesting. That's one of the members of their crew. Another member is an artificial life form, who is kind of like Data, right? Very eclectic while also being brilliant. And they form this really interesting group where they go around and they solve problems that no one else can solve. A noble goal, or is it? So when they try to recruit Seven and they're telling her about all the things that they do and all the people that they can help, they also mentioned that, yeah, they'll help if people pay the right price. They will also help them create weapons. They'll also help them with win conflicts and stuff like that. But he does tell Janeway that we won't create weapons of mass destruction. We'll create weapons of minor destruction, meaning they won't wipe out whole star systems or whole planets, but they'll definitely help people enhance their armaments. And Janeway's kind of like, ugh. But what he tells Seven is like, this, what we do can really expand your mind. Aside from that little like ethical thing that maybe you guys don't like, we really can figure out stuff that no one else can figure out. And we ask the most interesting questions. You're concerned with achieving perfection because that's what it means to be a Borg. But if you're with us, you can go towards the noble goal of understanding the universe, right? And I think that's a really attractive offer, at least to people who love learning. So people like me, that offer would have been really attractive. Minus the like warmongering, like that doesn't feel good to me at all. Like you're using all your power for good, which is what Seven tells them. Seven's like, yeah, it is a noble goal. However, the way you go about it, you manipulate, you take advantage, like you twist people so that way you can get what you want out of it. You're not doing it in any kind of a way that makes me want to be a part of something. So while he did make a very compelling pitch, that did make her think like, yeah, I'm not really being challenged here on Voyager. At least I'm respected and I'm with people who respect other beings, which y'all don't. So anyways, love this episode. If you have not seen this episode in a while, I highly recommend. It's just a fun one. And then at the end, when the bounty hunters start blasting away at the think tank's ship, because they hide in subspace so no one could find them. But Janeway and Seven and team figure out a way to disrupt their ship and pull it out of subspace so that the bounty hunters can actually catch it, because everybody's got a bounty on these people because they solve problems for a price. And the price is always something that's a little too steep for people to pay. But if they don't pay, they will undo whatever thing that they just solved. So the episode actually starts with a planet. I think it was like about to collapse from earthquakes or something like that. So they came up with some ingenious system to keep the planet whole and save everyone's lives. But then what they asked in return was like all the planet's resources, like all their food or something like that. And the representative was like, but if we don't have that, how are we going to live, for moving forward? And they were just like, oh, you don't want to pay it? All right, we'll undo what we did and like let your planet collapse. And so they're like, no, fine, take everything. So these people are terrible people. Like they're terrible people. A noble goal, but a really crappy way to go about it. So in the end, when they're just being blasted all over the place, it's so satisfying. And his little like hologram person comes back onto the bridge and his hair's like all messed up because on his ship he's being like blasted and stuff. And he's like, I urge you to reconsider, Seven. He's still trying to like get her. And Janeway looks at him and goes, we have an expression on Earth. Don't call us, we'll call you. And just is like, recalibrate shields, boop, and just like kicks him out. And it's just, it's so satisfying. So yeah, if you haven't watched it in a while, highly recommend. That's a good episode. Okay, I'm going to check the chat and then we will go to the next episode on the list. When Grace says, Farscape is really good once they find their groove. Isn't that true of everything? It just takes a couple episodes / seasons to really like figure out what it's about. And then it's really good. Yes. So Mr. Captain 93 says, didn't the think tank say that they cured the phage in this episode? Yes. This is the episode where they admit that they found the cure for the Vidian phage, which I just want to see what the Vidians are like now. Like, what are they like now that they don't have to kill people and steal their organs? Because they did talk about how they were these cultural phenoms before the phage hit them, and they became kind of like cannibals. Except for instead of eating, they were installing all these different parts. So I wonder, without that pressure there, did they go back to talking about art and philosophy and culture and things like that? Also, how did they, in their minds, reconcile all the damage that they've done to other people? All the damage of like stealing organs. Like, how did they as a people move forward with that? Also, third question, did anybody come for revenge? Were there any kind of Arturises who are coming back being like, you took my kid's lungs, or like, you took my, you know what I mean? Like, did anybody come for them? These are questions that I would love answered. And these are questions that I feel like Lower Decks could have answered in a season 6. But, oh well. Robert S. says, hey, the think tank were just offering their services. The other races had buyer's remorse. No kidding. Talk about buyer's remorse, especially when, to be fair though, to Robert S., which makes me feel like we're in an episode of Severance. Yeah, to be fair to Robert S., the think tank does tell you their price before you enter into an agreement with them. So they don't do a bait and switch. Even though they're super shady with like manipulating people to get what they want, they do not actually lie. They don't say, you know, we're going to tell you the price afterwards or something like that. They tell you up front. Like they told Janeway, we will help your ship. We will save them from being destroyed by these bounty hunters if you give us 7 of 9. Like they were very clear about that. So that is true. Nadia says, capitalism run amok. Very true. Nadia says, I'm glad they cleared the phage. I wonder what the Vidians had to give them. Ooh, that's a good question. What did the Vidians have to give them? When Grace says maybe they gave Durst's face back. I'm with Nadia. Ew. Yeah, PS2 Chippers got it right. The price is okay, but it's the interest that kills you. There you go. Okay. Now let's go to the next episode on the list. Season 5, Episode 24, Relativity. 7 is recruited by a 29th century Starfleet timeship to stop a saboteur from planting a device that will destroy Voyager. She travels through various points in time, trying to save the ship while avoiding getting temporal psychosis. She manages to catch up with the saboteur, who turns out to be a future version of the timeship's very own captain, who is ironically suffering from temporal psychosis. Again, I love this episode. Absolutely love it. Oh wait, I didn't say why the last episode had anything to do with 7. Okay, so the think tank wanted 7 because she's a brilliant person, and she was already smart. This is what the think tank person said. She was already smart before she got these Borg enhancements, and now she's just like off the charts and so unique and all this stuff. In this episode, she's also selected because of her unique abilities. One of her abilities is that her Borg implant allows her to see things that are temporally displaced. Who knew? This is the episode where we find that out. So there's a part in the scene that I just showed you where there's a device in one of the Jeffries tubes, and B'Elanna lifts the lid and 7 can see it. And she's like, oh, it's a device and it looks like this and it's doing this. And B'Elanna's like, why can't I see it anywhere? And 7's like, oh, it's because my Borg implants give me the ability to see anything that's out of like temporal phase or whatever. What? That's wild. That's totally wild. So the crew of this 29th century timeship recruits her because she's got this ability. Plus, she is, I guess, for those reasons, because Borg do time shifting all the time, apparently, she's presumably going to be protected from the dangers of temporal psychosis, of too much time travel, and it makes your brain go wonky. I think that's the thinking, is that she will be less likely to fall victim to that. However, in this episode, when the episode starts, they're like, oh, this is your 3rd time. And they're like, we want to be, and she says, so what, if I'm not successful, you'll just recruit me again? And Captain Braddox is like, yeah, but like a 4th time, you know, we kind of want to avoid that because that could lead to space psychosis, but you'll probably be fine. And then he goes, 3rd time's the charm, right? And you're just like, okay, but you're like messing with her brain, but maybe you're not messing with her brain because you just put it back and then you reset time and then it's okay. I'm not really sure how this temporal psychosis situation works. Also, is there a treatment for it? Because if there isn't, I bet the doctor could figure it out. Anyways, I think this episode's fun. We get to jump through a bunch of different time periods. We get to see Seven at Utopia Planitia when it's in dry dock. And then we get to see, just like all these different time points where she's jumping back and forth and trying to find the weapon and trying to figure out who the saboteur is. It's just a good time. There's an episode exactly like this in Discovery, season 5. I don't remember the name of the episode, but it's a similar thing where there is a time bug on the ship. It's a Crinum device. It's a Crinum weapon. And they're stuck in this like loop where they jump through all these time periods with the ship, with the Discovery. And it's the same thing. It's like, now it's in dry dock and it's being built and, it's the future. But then they actually go to like the far future, which is wild. Just the fact that they can go to the far future and they're kind of like jumping around versus this, they're just going from this point backwards because at this point, Voyager gets destroyed. So there's no far future, right? So they got to go backwards. Anyways, I don't know, just a fun episode. Highly recommend. I like this one. Okay, let me check the chat and then we'll go to the next episode on the list. So Mr. Captain 93 says in response to what the Vidians probably had to give to the think tank, they probably had to give a pair of Talaxian lungs. Those lungs, man. PS2 Chipper says, now this is an episode that I can never forget. It was the episode that made me think of Jerry Ryan as a thespian. I wonder why this episode? Why this episode more than any other episode? Just curious. Nadia says, I wonder where they got those Talaxian lungs from. Robert S. says, Seven looks good in a blue uniform. Seven looks good in everything because she's beautiful. She looks good in everything. She looks good when she's just wearing like civilian clothes. Although I will say that outfit they have her in is so tight. I could not imagine wearing something like that on TV or anywhere because it was so tight it's basically painted on. And that makes me uncomfortable, but she did look great. Best of Trek, Worst of Trek says, my short series Federation News Minute takes place on the time ship Relativity. No way. That's why I can talk about all Trek time periods simultaneously. Dustin, do you make that clear in your Federation News Minute? Is that because I've seen a few of them, but I don't like remember your like script off the top of my head. Do you say like reporting in from the time ship Relativity? Because that's so interesting. When Grace says, I wish I had a plot device on my eye. Don't we all? Or somewhere, some handy place. Mr. Captain 93 says, can we acknowledge the timeline of Janeway's hairstyles in this episode? Yes. So the season 1, I call it the pumpkin because it looks to me like a pumpkin the way her hair is like wrapped and it's got like a handle in the top. I was not a fan of the pumpkin. I was not a fan, but it did look future-y. It did. And then I don't know. I don't know what happened because I don't usually read background stuff too often because I feel like, I don't know if it's always super accurate. So I don't know what was going on with the situation with the hair, but at some point they just switched to like a short bob. And I think maybe they just stopped with the wigs and the extensions and whatever. And Janeway was like, just give me a short bob. I'm just going to look like I'm from Earth. Okay. I don't need anything fancy going on. And I think that was the right call because once she puts that bob on, you're just like, I can't even imagine her without it. I'm just like, yeah, that's what her hair looks like. You know what I mean? Anyways, Robert S. hire the think tank to solve temporal psychosis. Duh. PS2 Chipper. I can't show all my cards. I need to keep a few up my sleeves. Yes, Nadia, her catsuit outfit was ridiculous, to be honest, and definitely had to be the product of the imagination of Hollywood boomers. It was absolutely a product of the whole thing I said before about the Paramount machine that was trying to make this character iconic. I think that's part of this catsuit because that was very iconic. Yes, the pumpkin. Doesn't it look like a pumpkin? Love the pumpkin. Do you really, Dustin, or are you joking right now? Because I just need to know, are you telling me the truth? Do you love the pumpkin? Because I'm definitely not a fan of the pumpkin, but I am a fan of them trying to make things look spacey and futury. I do like that. I do like that effort. When Grace says, they claim the pumpkin was because the light was shining through her hair too much, but it could be some Berman stuff going on there. Oh, that is interesting. So what, the light not shine? You know what? I'm not even gonna, okay. Nadia says, OMG, you should find out what happened with the hair and then do a short video on it, like a behind the scenes explanation. That's actually kind of funny. It's funny if I looked into this and found the truth. And then it's also funny if I never looked into it and made up a ridiculous story for why she had that hairstyle. Either way would be pretty funny, actually. Mr. Captain 93 says 90s hair icons, the Rachel and the Janeway. Nadia says, I like Janeway's topsy tail ponytail thing, that low ponytail. Actually, I like that too. I like that too, where it was like the, what would I call that one? Like I'm thinking of something else, but it's a dessert, like the bread roll or whatever. It was like a roll, and then she had like a ponytail coming out the back. That was actually pretty cool. PS2 Chipper says TNG can clear out the junk closet and come up with the Borg. It's always the Borg. Do both versions of the hair video and then make us guess which one is real. Oh, that's even funnier. You're going to be able to tell which one is real because the ridiculous one is going to be so ridiculous. And I mean, I'm imagining that the real one is not as ridiculous. That's how TNG makes things look spacey. That is how TNG made things look spacey. And TOS is they would literally just be like, you know, a pantyhose container or whatever was laying around. They would spray paint it, put some chicken wire on it and shoot it at a certain angle. And it would look like an alien thing. Pretty impressive. Wingrace says Janeway had the pumpkin during season 1 because she was bitten by 5 snakes on the top of her head shortly before filming. I can't even with you. Let's go to the next episode on the list. Season 6, Episode 2, Survival Instinct. Seven is confronted by 3 former Borg drones who were a part of her Unimatrix. At some point in the past, the 4 of them crash-landed and started to regain their individuality before the collective could locate them. Seven re-assimilated them out of fear, and even though they've now regained their individuality, they are still telepathically linked because of what Seven did. The Doctor is able to sever their link, but this also dramatically shortens their lifespan, giving them only 1 month to live. So I don't love this episode. Most of the episodes on this list, I'm like, oh my gosh, I love this. I almost forgot about this episode actually, but when I was making this list about the evolution of Seven's character, I had to stop here. This is a really big moment. She is confronted with her past in a different way from the way she was in Infinite Regress, when she was confronted with the minds of the people she assimilated. Here, she's confronted with the people she's assimilated. And these people are drones themselves, are former drones. So, I mean, what she did as a drone adjacent, I guess, when they crash landed and they were disconnected from the hive and they started to regain their individuality and she like reassimilated them. That was because she was afraid and she thought they were all going to leave because they were. And they were like, we don't want to be drones anymore. And we don't want to be a part of this. And so she forced them to be back in a group and she forced them to work together. So that way they could call the Borg to come and get them. I kind of get that. She was acting kind of out of her human fear of being alone. And also remember, she was assimilated as a little kid. So her last memory of being human was being a scared little kid. So it makes sense to me. But also the fact that these 3 who are now liberated, like how did that happen? But now that they're liberated, they're all stuck with each other and they can hear each other's thoughts. And it's really interesting because Janeway asks them, how is that different from being in the collective? The fact that you guys can hear each other's thoughts. And Seven says, well, in the collective, it's billions of voices all at once. So it just sounds like white noise. It's like an empty hum, like an open AC or a fan or something next to your ear. It doesn't mean anything. But the 3 of them said with only 3 voices, it's like torture. Which we talked about this on a previous live stream. We talked about, what was it? It was like touch telepathy or something like that, where it was like, you could understand what people are thinking if you touch them or something. I don't remember why we were having that conversation, but I remember saying, I would not want that. I would not want people to read my mind by like touching me or looking at me or any of that. Like, just, if you want to know what I'm thinking, just ask me and I will tell you, or I will not, but I want that choice. Right. And I can't imagine being one of these 3 former drones where you are forced to hear other people's thoughts and not only hear their thoughts, they can also feel each other's feelings. They also said they dreamed each other's dreams. Like they could see each other's dreams when they were asleep. There was no moment when they had any kind of peace to themselves, which is so heartbreaking. And that being said, once the Doctor disconnects them, it's because however their augments were pulled out, they weren't done like properly or whatever. So the Doctor's able to finish the job, but and it disconnects, it severs their link. So they can only hear their own thoughts. However, at the same time, it shortens their life. So they only have 1 month to live. I think that was a really cruel addition on the point of the writers. Why would they only get 1 month to live? I don't understand why we needed that. Why we needed that in the story. I guess my guess is that it's supposed to make it more difficult of a decision for 7 of 9, because there's lots of scenes of her talking about what's right. Is it really right to disconnect them, or is it better for them to live like this? Blah, 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 blah. But what does that have to do with her? Like, she connected them. That was what she did. That is now gone. Now the question is, should the doctor disconnect them or not? And to me, that's a them choice. That's a decision between them and the doctor. Maybe Captain Janeway, because it's her ship and technically her doctor, and she could be like, get off our ship, but like, I don't see why. And maybe I missed this part of the episode because I didn't watch it too carefully in reviewing it for today's conversation. But I don't know why it was Seven's choice in any way, shape, or form, like why this discussion happened and why she needed to have, why the writers made it so that the characters could only live for 1 month if they decided to disconnect. So they did decide to disconnect. And then it was like, what we do with our 1 month, and it's like, it was very sad and, sweet and bittersweet and whatever. But I just feel like that was cruel, unnecessarily cruel. Why can't they have as many years as anyone else and just be disconnected from the hive? I don't know why. Anyways, I'm going to check the chat. But I had to add this episode to this list because, again, Seven's being confronted with her past and the consequences of her actions, for better or for worse. So I'm going to check the chat, and then we'll go to the next episode on the list. PS2 Chipper says, in TOS, the red fabric was cheaper for the shirts. That's why more red shirts were killed off. That's just a hypothesis. I kind of like this idea of having a video series of just ridiculous, like, fan theories, just ridiculous fan theories. And I already know if I do a handful of them, but I do them seriously, right? Like, as if I really believe them, and I just, like, keep stacking them. I feel like, I don't know. I just feel like I will get, like, 1,000 fact checkers on those videos being like, actually, according to a documentary from 1993, which I think would be really funny. Best of Trek, Worst of Trek says, I like the story being told, but this episode overall bores me. Yeah, I don't even know if I super love the story being told in this episode. And maybe it's because the whole story is told in flashbacks. And I'm also kind of like, so you're piecing together what's going on as you're watching. It's like these 3 people show up and they accost 7 and we don't know why. And all throughout we're having all these flashbacks. And I think the flashbacks are to make the episode more interesting, because if it wasn't told in, like, out of order, the episode I think would be totally flat. So I'm not sure if I love any part of the episode, except for the fact that they're trying to explore this idea of facing the past and consequences of your actions. So, like, maybe I like the idea of the episode. Nadia says, we're still in Nadia's hair. Hilarious. Janeway had the pumpkin because she was secretly going through a metamorphosis process and then she eventually became the Borg queen. So her head was elongating. Oh, that's interesting. Nadia says, I think that's exactly right. It's a good story, but it's not such a great execution. But it makes you wonder if you would decide to remain connected forever or live 1 month of silence. That's a good question. Let me know your answer in the chat. Would you rather remain connected to 2 other people, feeling their every feeling, hearing their every thought for the rest of your lives, not being able to separate because for whatever reason they also couldn't separate from each other? Or would you rather disconnect and then have only 1 month to live? It's a really morbid question, but me being the introvert I am, disconnect me. That sounds like torture. And in the last scene of the episode, but I would love to hear your opinion. Let me know in the chat. But in the last scene of the episode, when the 3 of them are disconnected, you just see them, like, smiling and just, like, so light, because the whole episode you see them all stressed out and they're so light and they're just like, I have no idea what you were going to say. I have no idea what you're thinking. I have no idea what you're feeling. Oh, it's so quiet. Like, there's just this, like, relief. Like I said, bittersweet, but yeah, exactly. Mr. Captain 93 says, imagine having a live stream chat in your head 24/7. It would drive me crazy. Best of Trek, Worst of Trek says, it's an interesting thought experiment. It's a thought experiment in torture. Yeah, like, Yeah, Robert S. says, they didn't seem all that bothered about having a month. No, they didn't. Yeah, not like, to Nadia's point, I think they were just desperate at this point. I completely agree. I think at this point, because they had been, 7 did this back when she was in the collective, and she's been out of the collective for a year at this point. So I forget what they said in the episode. Maybe they said 4 years. For some reason, 4 years is in my head. But I don't know. But they've been doing this for years. They've been doing this for a long time. And so I think at this point, they're just desperate. I agree. Nadia says, I love your HR videos. I bet you could weave the hair stuff into the HR videos. Oh yes, I could do, you're so right. I could do so many, because really Hollywood has a lot of stuff to say about hair. So I could do a lot of videos about hairstyles, facial hair, and whatever. That would be funny. Really? When Grace says that Janeway became the Borg Queen in a novel, what did she do after she became the Borg Queen? Give me all the spoilers. Did she assimilate Earth? Or was she like immediately taken down? Or did she self-destruct the entire collective? I need more information. Nadia said, I would choose 1 month of silence, to be honest. Hashtag introvert. Best of Trek, worst of Trek says, depends on the other two people. See, I love your answer, Dustin, because it doesn't for me. It doesn't depend on the two people. Like having other people in my head would drive me bananas, because having me in my head alone sometimes drives me bananas. But I love that you're like, maybe. I would consider it, depending on the two. I love that. Nadia says, introverts of the world unite. Actually, don't unite. Go to your own quarters. Nicely done. Exactly. When Grace says, they could have thrown all three into the transporter with an orchid. I see where you're going here. And truly brought them unity. Ugh. That kind of brings the point, though. Like, why couldn't the Doctor solve this in a different way? I feel like the Doctor can do anything. Why couldn't he have found a way to have them be disconnected and live for more than a month? I mean, a month? Not even a year? And I'm guessing we're doing an Earth month, right? Because, like, what does time even mean when you're on a spaceship and not around a planet? So, like, dang. Ugh. Yeah. Robert S. says, I'm surprised they didn't just, like, off one another, which might have happened if they didn't disconnect from one another. Nadia says, I vote for Janeway Borg Queen, doing a Janeway Alpha Pie on the whole collective. When Grace says, yeah, she pretty much sacrificed herself to take them down. Oh, I called it. When Grace, was that actually a good book, though? That's like my fear with fanfic, is I tried to get into it a little bit, and I was just like, and I didn't try a lot. I just tried a couple books, and the writing wasn't great, and I love, like, I'm obsessed with reading. So I was like, I just couldn't keep going. Because books take so much more investment than just watching an episode of something and being like, oh, that wasn't great. Mr. Captain 93 says, would you want to know when your friend has to go potty? I would not want to know that. I would not want to know that. Should have Tuvixed them. Yeah. They basically were Tuvixed. They needed to be untuvixed. Some are great. Some are way fanficky. Yeah. And okay. I'm glad you said that. I don't have the patience to wade through. I wonder how the Tuvixing would have worked gender-wise. That's the beauty of Star Trek. We could have had that. Man, missed opportunity. Missed opportunity. Okay, let's go to the next episode on the list. Season 6, Episode 15, Tsunkatse. Seven is kidnapped and forced to fight in a brutal gladiator-style competition for the entertainment of a species that's obsessed with combat. A Hirogen fighter takes Seven under his wing and trains her to win a red match, a fight to the death. The crew is super excited to watch the games until they discover that Seven is a fighter, and likely all of the fighters are actually captives. So I love this episode too. I see Nadia just said, I thought this episode was ridiculous. Yes. And I loved it. So the opening scene where it starts with The Rock, I like lost it because I used to love watching wrestling when I guess I was in middle school or something at this point. Yeah, Dwayne The Rock Tuvix. That's hilarious. Yeah, I used to and I love The Rock. He was like one of my favorites. I had a small handful of favorites. And I remember freaking out when I saw he was in this episode. I was like, oh my gosh, like it was like the best of both worlds for me. And it makes sense because it was really hot at the time. So this crossover just totally made sense. That alone, I was in it. And mind you, like kids are pretty much like, at least I was like that as a kid. If I saw something that vaguely resembled something I was into, I wanted everything, right? So that's why they put Scooby-Doo on cereal, because I love Scooby-Doo. So I want cereal that has Scooby-Doo on the box. You know what I mean? I just want a part of it. So having The Rock in Star Trek freaked me out. I also like the part of this episode where 7 of 9 is fighting for Tuvok. I like their friendship. It's like an understated friendship. And it's almost like a surprise friendship. Like you wouldn't guess the two of these people would bond with literally anyone, but that's why they bond with each other, because they don't need to be with anyone else. And I think it might be this episode I think it is this episode where before Seven and Tuvok get kidnapped, they're on a shuttle doing something. And I think Seven says, do you want to talk about something or something like that? And Tuvok's like, why? And she's like, we've been sitting in silence for like 3 hours or something like that. And Tuvok's like, do you find that? She's like, oh, and she says, the doctor told me that I should fill awkward silences with conversation or something like that. And Tuvok is like, did you feel like the silence was awkward? And she was like, no. And he was like, me neither. Silence is fine. I just love that. I love that the two of them are just so perfectly paired as friends because they don't really need much chit chat. They don't need a lot of external validation. They don't need to be at the water cooler. They could just kind of sit and enjoy each other's company and just do their thing. And I love that. When they get kidnapped, the head guy is like, you need to fight and people hate the Borg here and you bring in lots of money or whatever. And Seven's like, no, I'm not going to comply. I'm not going to fight. Da, 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 da. And then he's like, oh, well, your friend here is taking up room and board in my space where, you know, another kidnapped victim could be here in his place. So if you don't fight, then I'm going to send him out to fight. And he's like, he got really tore up when they kidnapped them. I think he was like, I don't even know if he could see or if he was blinded or something, or I don't remember what it was, but like he couldn't move and he was like all kinds of messed up. He needed medical care. And the head fighter guy was like, no, we don't do medical care. Winners get medical care. That's what he said. He was like, winners get medical care. If you don't win a fight, you don't get medical care, which is crazy. Like the whole thing is crazy. So I do love that also, that the reason why Seven kept fighting is because he was like, I will let Tuvok stay here if you fight. You know, like I won't throw him out in the ring. It's one of you that has to go out. So, and then also I like that when she's fighting this Hirogen who's training her to like win her match, and then she sees that her match is against him. And she's like, wait, you were tricking me all along. That he wasn't tricking her. He was tired of this. He's been doing this for 20 years. He doesn't want to do it anymore. And he's ready to be done, but he's a fighter. So he has to go out fighting. So he really did genuinely train her to end him. I like that. And then the last, second to last scene, or like towards the end of the scenes, Seven wins the fight and she's about to end the fight. And so she's about to like do the death blow and she's got the double fisted punch that's so classic for Star Trek. And she kind of thinks twice and she's like, wait, I'm not this person. I don't want to like violently, brutally murder someone. And the Hirogen looks up at her and says, don't make your prey suffer. Because he made it very clear, it's you or it's me. Like only one of us is leaving. And I hope it's you. But if you don't take your shot, it's going to be me, right? So he was like, don't make your prey suffer. Like, don't make me suffer. So she lifts her arms to like strike. And then at that moment, they're transported back into Voyager. And then they're like, Seven, are you okay? And she's like, yeah, I'm good. You know, and she like gets up and she helps him up. And he was like, well, I guess you were right. There was another way, because she kept saying, there's another way. My crew will save us. Someone will save us. And he was like, yeah. Someone will save us. People have been saying that in here for 20 years. No one's come to save us. But he had not met the crew of Voyager. They actually did save them. I mean, they didn't save all the fighters, obviously. They saved Seven, and the only reason they saved the Hirogen also was because the two of them were entangled, and so they just said, transport everything. Just transport them all up, you know, because they were just trying to isolate Seven, but they were like, take both of them. So presumably all the other criminals are still trapped, and they've contacted the government and said that, you know, these people are being kidnapped, but the government doesn't want to hear it because they're making so much money off these fights. It was just a thing. It was just a whole thing. But at the very end, Seven was like, questioning her humanity, saying, have I changed at all? Am I still just like the Borg, just going around destroying things because I can? And I think it was the doctor who told her, I don't think you need to question your humanity. I think you've just verified it. Like the fact that you're struggling with this internally, because you didn't struggle with this as a Borg drone. So I love that. All those reasons is why I love this episode. Okay, I'm going to check the chat and then we will go to the second to last episode on the list. Robert S. says, this episode was just a fun commercial for WWF on UPN. It sure was. It sure was. Nadia says, also, why Seven? Sometimes I thought Voyager went a little Seven-centric, to be honest. Why not one of the physically stronger crew members? Yeah, like anyone else. Like Seven is strong because she's Borg, but that's it. So to answer this question, Nadia, because I was just watching an interview with the actress who played 7 of 9 about this very thing. Like when they made that decision that they were going to bring in 7 of 9 and they were going to make her an iconic character, they also decided she was going to be the center of the show. Like that was the decision. So for that reason, every single episode for the 4, 5, 6, 7, she was on the show for 4 seasons. And they made almost every episode, if she was not the A plot, they made her a very strong B plot, like purposefully. So you're absolutely right. They went like Seven crazy. It was like every episode has to involve Seven. Every episode has to have Seven in it. Even if it's not about Seven, you've got to have Harry Kim falling in love with Seven in a Jeffries tube. You've got to have, even if it's about Tom and B'Elanna, you've got to have Seven of Nine following them around, trying to find out about their relationship. Like it's always got to kind of like wrap around her because they were trying to make that the focus. And I totally agree with you. I think it was too much Seven. There's a whole cast of incredible characters that we could have developed. But they were doing it very intentionally. And I think we could feel it, right? We can all feel like, oh, another Seven episode. Yeah, Mr. Captain 91 says, if you can smell what Seven is assimilating. Do you remember how The Rock used to do that one eyebrow thing whenever he would come to the ring? And he totally does that in his alien makeup in this episode of Voyager, which just like, it just killed me. Like he came in and he was like looking around. I was like, ah! Yeah, it totally worked on me. I was the target market for sure. Me and probably teenage boys. But I was definitely the target market for that. PS2 Chipper says Tuvok and Seven of Nine are still acquaintances in Star Trek Online. Oh, that's cute. How on earth do you know that though? Like in Star Trek Online, do you play these characters or are they cutscenes where you find out about what happens to the characters? Their relationship is described as adequate. I'm just picturing that for like a Valentine's Day card. Our relationship is perfectly adequate. You sent me the link. Okay, of course you did. Thank you. Mr. Captain 93 says it's cool. They went the Tuvok way because in theory, you would think Chakotay would be the natural storyline as he was the boxer. Yeah, that's a good point. And they did show that he was like all excited about it because he used to box in his day. Like they did definitely weave that into the storyline and they showed him and B'Elanna being excited about it. But yeah, if we take a step back from making every single thing about Seven of Nine, this episode could have been more interesting. Who would have been a better character than Seven? So Chakotay, yeah, I could see that. I could see Chakotay being really good too and winning a lot of fights. Other than Chakotay though, I'm not sure who I would want to see in that ring who I think could actually fight. I mean, if you see Harry Kim and Tom Paris in the shoot, in that like prison episode, they both look pretty tough and they both look like they could really fight. So maybe this would have been an interesting episode with any of the characters. I don't know. I was actually thinking that too. Nadia said, you just reminded me of that horrible boxing chaos episode. Blech. I was just thinking that same thing, that episode was like so stupid. Anyways, to an episode that's not so stupid, the next episode on the list. Season 6, Episode 19, Child's Play. Voyager locates Icheb's parents and arranges for his return, but Seven becomes suspicious of their true intentions. These biologists seem to be relieved and shocked to get their son back, and the community welcomes him with open arms. However, things are not as they appear. Turns out, Icheb was genetically engineered as a bioweapon against the Borg. The second Voyager leaves Icheb, he's sedated and sent out yet again as bait. This time, Seven rescues him before he's re-assimilated. I love this episode. I think Icheb's parents are the worst. And I love the way that Seven is so protective of Icheb and his like well-being. And I also love seeing the conflict in Icheb. This is probably more of an Icheb story than a Seven story. But I love how Icheb is like, oh, it's my parents. Wait, do I like my parents? I think I should like my parents, but I don't want to like my parents because he's a teenager and he's going through like, alien, human, teenage stuff. But also there's this conflict of his identity because he's been Borg for so long, like most of his life now at this point relatively, where he's like, but I'm Borg, but I'm not Borg, but and everything he's going through. And it's Seven's job to kind of help him navigate that transition. But she doesn't want to help him navigate it because she doesn't trust these people. And she shouldn't. The place where she goes wrong, and this is why Janeway is so hard on her. Janeway is like, you're super suspicious against these parents for no reason. You're being completely disrespectful and inappropriate to them. Like, you need to back off and let them bond with their own child. We're leaving the child, okay? He is staying here with his family. We are leaving, so deal with it. I think the reason why Janeway comes down so hard on her is one, she's absolutely right, because Seven was being super disrespectful. But the reason why Seven was being disrespectful is because she loves Icheb. But two, the way she was coming at it was very much because of her own hangups from her own parents. So the way that Seven got assimilated in the first place is that her parents were like these like ecologists. I don't even know what their special sciencey name was, but it just makes me think of those people who like go and live in the woods with gorillas or whatever, and then they raise their kid with them. It's kind of like that, except for they went to go explore the Borg. How did they even get to the Delta Quadrant? I don't remember. There was an episode all about that. It's not a great episode, so that's why I don't really remember. But anyways, they were studying the Borg, and they were whatever, xenobiologists, whatever they were. They were studying the Borg, and they realized that the Borg would not even notice them as long as they didn't seem like suspicious or dangerous or whatever. And so they felt safe, and then they got a little careless, and then the Borg did discover them, and then they were all assimilated, which is super sad, right? So Seven now is feeling a lot of anger towards her parents, that they were irresponsible, that they did this on purpose, that they should have never taken her, that they should have never been being around the Borg, et cetera, et cetera. So she's like projecting that onto Icheb's parents. They must have been irresponsible. How on earth did Icheb get assimilated? They must not have taken good care of him, and et cetera, et cetera. There's a scene where like they're talking in the conference room, and Seven says like something about like, what about Icheb's safety? And Icheb's mom is like, we can take care of our own son. And Seven's like, false, because we found him on a Borg cube. And you're just kind of like, what do you have to say to that? And that's when Janeway's like, get out of here. That's when she gets kicked out of the room. But that was fair. That was fair. Can you take care of his safety? So she's coming at it from a perspective of, your parents must have been ridiculously ill-prepared and irresponsible to allow you to become assimilated. However, she was wrong. They were not irresponsible or ill-prepared. They planned it on purpose. They had this kid. They birthed him for the sole purpose of getting him assimilated, which is crazy. And it's why they're the worst parents ever. And yes, they're biologists, they're geneticists, and they used whatever tools they could. But to send your own child is just like, how does one do that? And then when they get their child back, the dad's all like, we got him back. We get a second chance with him, because of course he's all memory wiped. He doesn't remember anything that happened. And she's like, no, he was built for a purpose. Like, we had him for a purpose. We can't keep him. We need to send him right back, make sure he gets assimilated again, so that way he can destroy the whole, all the Borg collective. Like, this is our one weapon, our one tool. We need to send him back. And he's like, I mean, can he stay the night? Like, can we get a weekend? And she's just like, more time, more bonding. It's going to be harder to let him go. So we just need to like cut it quits and, send him up there. But before Voyager gets too far away, Seven picks up on this, because she's still getting all the suspicious vibes from the parents, and she like saves him. But here's the thing: at the end of this episode, Seven is talking to him, and she's like, someday you'll be able to, I hope someday you'll be able to forgive your parents, or something like that. Because maybe that's a realization she came to of forgiving her parents. I don't really remember. But she says something like that. And Icheb says, I hope that someday they'll be able to forgive me. And you're like, what? Because he feels like he let them down. They made him to be a weapon. And he was a weapon for that one ship that he was on, that they found him on. But then when it was his turn to like go and do his purpose, which was to be assimilated again, he was rescued and did not do that. And so he let his people down by not being the weapon they created him to be a second time. And it's like, how messed up is that now that's on him, that your suffering is his fault. He did not choose to be born. You guys very much chose that. He did not choose to have this biological weapon in his DNA. You guys put that in there, but now he's living with this guilt that he let all his people down, which is super sad. And I just love Icheb. He's my favorite Borg kid. He's super, next to like the little girl whose name I forget. She's really cute too. Not Naomi Wildman, but the little Borg girl. Anyways, I'm going to check the chat, and then we will go to the last episode on the list. Yes, it's Crowley from Supernatural. He's also the bad guy on Leverage. And he's also the attorney in Battlestar Galactica with a dog. Doesn't he have a dog in BSG? Or is he always hallucinating a dog? Robert S. says, at first I thought this mom was Kristen Wiig from SNL. She does have a face that looks very familiar. I was also trying to place her when I was watching these clips. I was like, she looks like somebody I've seen on something before, but I'm actually not sure if that's true. Like, I didn't look up what this actress looks like outside of all that makeup. But I think just the way they did her makeup made her look kind of like neutral, like just very similar to a lot of other people. Nadia says, Seven's parents' ship got sucked into the wake of a Borg cube that went into trans warp. Oh, that's how they got there. Yes. Okay, thank you. I was like, how did they even get there? Yes, that's what happened. Because they were studying them or whatever. Um, and I don't know, like, I don't know how I feel about Seven's parents. Of course, they didn't want to be assimilated. Of course, they didn't want their kid to be assimilated. But when they were stuck through that transwarp conduit, I don't think they had any way to get home, right? So they were like, let's do our science thing while we're here. That's what I'm thinking. I'm not going to rewatch that episode to find out, though. So it's just going to be a mystery. Mr. Captain 93 says, be very, very quiet. We're hunting some Borg. That is how they were. They were like going through the ship and they were like, don't say anything and just hopefully they won't notice we're here. Okay, Randall Wong says his cat dies and then he's given a dog. Okay. Was he also hallucinating? You know what? Now I'm going to get on a BSG tangent. Let's go to the next episode and the last episode on the list. Season 6, Episode 26, and Season 7, Episode 1, Unimatrix Zero. Seven stumbles into a secret virtual hangout where some Borg drones retain their individuality while regenerating. Of course, the Borg Queen finds out and is not having it, so she decides to wipe out all of the drones if she cannot re-assimilate this part of their minds. Voyager jumps in to help the rebels, but when it becomes clear that they can't win, they decide to burn it all down to save the drones from massive destruction. So, I like Unimatrix Zero. It's not my favorite episode on the list. Probably be like my third least favorite if we take out the 2 episodes that I said I didn't really like at all, but they had to go on this list. Because it's kind of like, I don't know. But what I like the idea of is I love the idea that there is a Unimatrix Zero. I love the idea that the Borg drones have this one space where they have individuality, and it's only when they're regenerating, and when they wake up, they lose all memory of it. I think that is so interesting. And what I'd forgotten, I had forgotten how Seven got into this land until I went and looked at it today. So Axum, the guy who Seven was dating back when she was a drone in Unimatrix Zero, brought her into it somehow because they had developed some kind of pathogen that could go through the Borg drones, like that could go through the collective and that could allow them to reestablish their individuality when they wake up. But they needed somebody to deliver it. And since none of them could remember anything when they wake up, they needed Seven because they knew she had been severed from the hive and she could be able to deliver it to a Borg cube without like losing her memory about it, which is a really interesting, like clever way that the writers put all this together for how this could possibly work. So I do love that there is a Unimatrix Zero. And I love seeing like all the unassimilated drones, like having friends and like, I don't know, it's just it's an escape from their daily lives. And granted, it doesn't feel like an escape because they have no idea what's going on when they're drones and they have no idea what's going on when they're asleep. It kind of reminds me of Severance, if you haven't seen that show, where there's like a work life and then like an outside of work life. There's an outie and there's an innie. And one does not know what the other one does at all. When they're in this space, they're in this space. When they're in that space, they're in that space. That's what's going on here. And I really like that idea. I don't know if it needed to be 2 episodes. Maybe. But there's this one scene when the Borg drones, like the Queen figures out the code for something and she's able to send drones into Unimatrix Zero and they show up in this dreamland and they start assimilating people. And you're like, what the heck? How can you assimilate someone in their sleep to be? It's all kinds of wildness. And she's like bringing them back into the fold. And at one point, you know, because Janeway gets in the middle of this and she's like, yes, I'm going to take the pathogen. I'm going to deliver it. Let's go. You know, and Seven is like, wait a minute. Isn't that a civil war? Like, isn't that what we're starting here? And Janeway's like, I prefer to call it supporting the resistance or whatever. She's ready to be done with the Borg, right? So she gets in the middle of it. She gets assimilated. She gets caught. The Queen is like threatening her or whatever. And then the Queen just starts destroying Borg cubes. She's like, there's one drone on the ship that I can't hear his thoughts, destroyed. There's one Borg, you know, there's like hundreds and thousands destroyed. And she just starts blowing them up. She starts doing the ultimate Janeway Alpha Pi on all these Borg ships. And then Janeway's like, all right. We will stop what we're doing. We will shut it all down. Just please stop like destroying all these ships full of drones just because there's one you can't hear. So in the end, nobody wins. But I guess we're supposed to presume, actually, no, I think we have proof of this. We have proof of this at the end of this episode. Yeah, that it works. That the whole, like they did give the pathogen and whatever, like they did deliver it, but then they got assimilated. So then the Queen knew about it. So I think maybe she was doing countermeasures, but we know it works because at the end when Voyager is like fighting to get their assimilated crew people back, get Janeway back and Tuvok and B'Elanna and somebody else I think was assimilated with them. And so they're trying to get them back, and Chakotay's like firing at them or whatever, and then another Borg ship comes out and they're like, oh man, we're outnumbered. But then the other Borg ship is being run by people who've been like released from the mind control, and they're running the ship. I don't know. So I guess we're supposed to think that all's well that ends well, but of course this is not the last we see of the Borg. So all that to say, I like the idea of this episode. I don't know if we needed 2 episodes about it, but I like the idea. And this is a fitting place, I think, to end her story. Because here we see Seven falling in love and really reconnecting with her humanity, even to the point where she removes her cortical node in this dreamland because she doesn't have to have it. She doesn't have to wear it. And she's not wearing a catsuit in the dreamland. She's wearing just like regular loose-fitting clothes, like just like a regular person would wear. And it's nice to see her human side be happy. And she has emotions and stuff. She's smiling, she's crying, she's hugging. She's really kind of come full circle here. Now, of course, when she wakes up, she goes back to her normal self. But it's just nice to see a glimpse of like the Seven that could have been had she not been assimilated. Okay, I'm going to check the chat one last time, and that's it for today. PS2 Chipper says, Seven's parents are like those parents that take their children to study silverback gorillas in the jungle. That's exactly what they're like. Except maybe if they got pulled in accidentally, it wasn't totally their fault. I don't know. Nadia says, or those stories like the one about the couple who really liked grizzlies and thought they could stay near them and be safe, and then they got mauled to death. Yeah. Ugh. I mean, people just forget that wild animals or even captive animals are still animals. Like, they're not your buddy. They're not your pets. And even pets will eat you if they have to. So just keep that in mind. For all of you who have pets out there, unless you have a fish, then you're probably good. And then Mr. Captain 93 says, missed opportunity. They should have brought in Hugh. They do bring Hugh back in Picard, which again, I totally geeked out about. But it would have been so cool. You're absolutely right. It would have been so cool to see Hugh here. However, Hugh was in the Alpha Quadrant, but it would have been so cool to see him here. I think they couldn't have done that though, because however he would have traveled from the Alpha Quadrant to get here, the immediate next question would have been like, take me with you. Right? Like, you just came from our home. Can you just take us back there or send a message or something like that? Exactly. And then Wingray says, I wanted to say Body and Soul, but that was really the Doctor and just great Jerry acting. Exactly. So that's why Body and Soul didn't make this list, because it was fantastic to see 7 of 9 having these different, acting like the Doctor. But the whole episode was about the Doctor. It was the Doctor just in her body. So the episode on the list that was similar was the Infinite Regress, where we got to see 7 being all these different characters, but it was because of 7. But if you have another episode that you love from 7 that I did not mention, let me know in the comments below. That's it for tonight. Thank you so much for joining me live. Thank you so much for those who joined on the replay. And I am so excited to have everyone who has joined the membership. Welcome to the away team. And I can't wait to hear the direction you guys want to take this membership in. If you have not done so already, be sure to subscribe. Be sure to like the video. And I will see you next week.